Special thanks to our promotional partners at the American Philatelic Society.
The APS is the largest stamp collecting organization in the world, supporting collectors of any level worldwide.
For more information about membership and APS services, visit stamps.org.
I'm Charles Etting from H.R. Harmer in New York City.
And I'm Michael Cortese of Noble Spirit in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And this is Conversations with Philatelists. Michael, I'm back in the office. As you can tell, there's no cat running around this episode. Loved the YouTube comments that mentioned Nigel, though he appreciated them as well. And it's good to be back in my natural environment, surrounded by philatelic books. And today is an interview that I'm really looking forward to. I think this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, today we're talking to Constanze Dennis. She's one of the chief auction describers at Grosvenor Philatelic Auctions in the Strand.
Yeah, part of this great London philatelic scene. We've talked to George James and talked to the folks at Think Briefly, and there's this great group of young professionals in the United Kingdom who are really at the cutting edge in the forefront of the British auction scene. Yeah. So I love talking to people like this. I think Constanze will be a really fun conversation for us to have. I personally don't know her story. I know her from her position at Grosvenor, but I don't know how she got there. So I think that'll be, again, we've heard so many different paths to professional philately that it'll be interesting to hear a new story.
Yeah. The stories are or people's introductions into the hobby are kind of half the reason we're here. As we learned with Carol Bomarito, there's no right path into the hobby.
Some people just stumble into it. Some people, have it all meticulously planned out. I think it'll be, again, I'm really looking forward to this. And, the more I miss traveling to the UK for stamp shows and things like that, the more I enjoy talking to our British colleagues and counterparts. So, again, talking to Constanze will be really nice. What do you say we bring her on?
Absolutely. Here we go. I'll bring her in.
Hello there.
Hi. Constanze, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time out to talk to us.
That's all right. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Good, thanks. How about yourself?
That's all right. The sun has just started to come out, which is remarkable given I'm in Great Britain. But so yeah, that's quite nice. But yeah, no, all good here.
Great. All right, we'll kick things off. I figured we'd cover Grosvenor a lot, your experience through the hobby, what kind of got you into everything, and then
complicated story.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I look forward to that.
What a great place to start off. Then we'd love to hear this complicated story. How you ended up in your current position, and your bio on the Grosvenor website says that you studied physics, I believe, which is not a typical background for a philatelist, I would say. So how did you end up here?
I mean, this will take about. Well, basically, where do I begin? I mean, I got into stamps completely by accident. When I was about 15, because I'm from, I used to live in what's called a council house, and also it's like where poor people live, blah, blah, blah. They, Oxford University did this like outreach program where they like rounded up a load of commoners basically to go and look around the university for a week. And when I was there, we had a free day to go and do whatever we wanted for the day. And so I went around all the charity shops looking for clothes and stuff. And then I just happened to see a packet of stamps, and on the front stamp was this really cute little tea set on a stamp. And that's when I first just bought some stamps, and that kind of stemmed from there. But I wasn't intending remotely to work in stamps. I obviously saw on the website I was always very, very into physics, so I went off to do physics, thinking I'm going to be a physicist. Like I always wanted to, since I was about 12 or 13, I wanted to be mainly in medical physics and sort of design brain scanner stuff like that. And so yeah, I went off to university, took the stamp collection. Didn't make me a lot of friends, remarkably enough. And then at the end of my first year at university, I got diagnosed with leukemia, so I had to drop out. I didn't have to drop out. I could have gone back, but I really didn't like Oxford. I hated. I love the learning element, but I'm not. Again, I'm very left wing. I'm very socialist, and the whole concept of Oxford University wasn't really for me as a thing. So then obviously I got better from the cancer, and then I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do in my life now? And then the other thing I liked apart from physics was stamps. So I did some work experience in an auction house in London, like a general antiques auction house. And then I got my first job at Sandifer, which is a small postal auction. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're quite big. They're quite a big auction house. And then I worked there for a year, and then they got rid of half their staff, me included. And then I had a few job offers, and I just picked Grosvenor because it seemed like the most fun. So that's how I ended up here. So I did warn you, it is a bit a weird, complicated story. But so yeah, plan B basically became plan A, and now, it's gone quite well, so stick with it.
Yeah. That first general auction house, how different was it going from collector to auction lot describer? Did you find that it was challenging? There was a slight learning curve? I mean, I feel like a lot of people feel like there's this massive barrier between philatelists, people who collect, and then people who describe auction lots. But how was the
mentality
transition?
of you have to think about it, because before you're just thinking about if it's interesting, whereas it's getting the mentality of the first thing you think about, I guess now when you work in stamps, is the value of an item. Mm-hmm. When someone passes me a thing, I'm thinking, what is this worth? How much, so that I guess your kind of mindset changes from before you're just looking at it because it's interesting, whereas it then also has this kind of, I guess, the financial element, where I think I find it hard because it's difficult, I guess you have to say, the way it's the element of having to tell people that while their stamps are interesting, they're not valuable. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, was to have to be enthusiastic about not have to be, but enjoying chatting about them with the enthusiasm because they're stamps and they're great, but also I guess having the more negative side that you have to then tell a lot of people that their stamps aren't super valuable. So I guess there was that slight more like there was more issues to deal with in that regard, just that it's no longer just fun and games. There's also the more serious element of these people's investments, these people's inheritances, and it's not always the outcome that they want. So I guess there's a bit of a because and there's also the volume of things that aren't worth a lot of money. So you go from everything being exciting, and then you have people coming in and you're having to repeatedly say this is interesting but not valuable. So I guess that's the main thing, was that I guess the just having to bring people's days a lot.
Yeah, it's something that not a lot of people really think that we have to deal with, but yeah, that's definitely
there's nothing worse than when you're flipping through a collection trying to figure out how you're going to break the bad news to the person. That's probably my least favorite part of the
that was more
too.
prevalent there as well, because generally the stuff that's coming in there, because that was a general auction house, so almost all the stamps that came in weren't very valuable. So it's not like now, obviously when people come to Grosvenor, most of the time it's something valuable because people attract the serious stamp collectors, whereas there it was just a lot of the same conversation. And then that's why I try to go to to an actual stampy auction house as opposed to being a general auction house, because then it's just stamps and there's more variety of stamps and not just the classic schoolboy album 5 times a day kind of thing.
So you've been with Grosvenor for 7 years now or so. How has your appreciation of the hobby and appreciation of the work changed? Because obviously, Michael and I have been doing this for a fairly short amount of time as well, and I feel like we're still at the point where every day we learn something new, and the growth curve is still exponential. So, what has it been like for you these first 7 or so years at a serious auction house like Grosvenor? How has it been for you to really cut your teeth on this stuff, and how have you found yourself growing within the hobby?
It's a great place to be, Grosvenor. I think the thing that's really nice about Grosvenor is in some areas of philately there's quite a lot of snobbiness and that malarkey, whereas Grosvenor's not like that at all. It's a very relaxed, very nice environment to be in. So not only am I getting paid to do my hobby, it's also in a very nice environment. So it's and my colleagues there, and everyone's just very nice, and there's a very nice learning environment. It's just nice to be around this kind of people. I mean, when I started, obviously, when I was at Sander Fair, I mainly just did re-offers of older lots. I just went through them to see why they hadn't sold and see, find if any faults had been missed, etc. So when I first started, I remember when I used to do my first descriptions, and I used to give them to my colleague Charlie to look at, and they would be mainly red pen when they came back. Just the whole lot would just be crossed out, like, what are you doing, Constanze? Whereas now it's nice now. I feel like now I've got a sort of, I think the last I don't know if you have the thing where you have last year or 2 weeks and you go, I think I might actually know what I'm doing now. I think I have. Obviously you're still learning, but now when people come in, unless it's matrons, I'm not too I can pretty much deal with any. The matrons, we've been trying to do matrons, but that's the thing at the minute. So Charlie, he's the one who does our matrons. He's about to retire, so he's trying to teach us all about matrons, and we're all trying to desperately be interested, but I just can't. I found my limit. I didn't think I had a limit with stamps, but that's my limit. I think now we've learned everything, but just not the matrons.
So that touches kind of upon a subject we've skirted on a lot of conversations before, is the mentorship. So we talked to Ricky Vera, we talked to George James. They all had these people that early in their careers kind of taught them how to describe auction lots, or taught them what to look for in philately that wasn't necessarily their specialty or anything like that. Would you say your colleague Charlie?
It's a mixture, because Charlie was mainly he's mainly a GB kind of guy, and then the guy at an institute called Glyn. I mean, he is an absolute powerhouse. I mean, he is, particularly on things like postal history, which I'm very stampy, but I'm not quite so hot on the postal history. So he's the one I go to learn about that. And then obviously our chairman James as well. So I've had not necessarily just one. I've had all of the older guys all of my colleagues who are not that old, honest. They've all sort of like chipped in different ways, because they've all got slightly different, specialized areas. Yeah. I mean, Glyn's remarkable. I mean, he started describing the year my mum was born. He's just been doing stamps for so long. But so I would say probably because Glyn's probably the one that I've learned the most from. But yes, they said there's been Charlie's the GB guy. And then Glyn for all the weird and the wonderful stuff, should we say, Glyn.
That's definitely a benefit to having a larger auction company, is you've got specialists in all kinds of different areas that can then train people that come in the different areas. But I think the specialist aspect of it is something that people definitely benefit from going to an auction house like that. Are you focusing on a special area, or are you focusing on British Commonwealth or anything?
Not especially, because to a degree, I mean, you sort of can't. I mean, while we have got obviously a few describers, you do sort of have to remain largely a jack of all trades for my job. I mean, anything can come through the door. And in terms of full-time describers, I mean, Charlie, as I said, is about to retire, and so there's basically just me and Glyn on the office describing. So I can't really go down too much of one path, because we have to do everything. I mean, most of the material we get is largely British. We have like the separate Great Britain auctions, and we get a lot of Commonwealth. So I guess that's what we do. That's what we do most of. So that's why I know the most about, just because that's the stuff that comes through the door. But we do pretty much largely have to know a little bit about everything.
Yeah, true.
You stole my question, Michael. That was what I was going to ask as well. You really don't know what you're going to face. I mean, I'll find myself getting really interested in one thing, and then all of a sudden it's very jarring to have to go from one collection to the next, I find. But you have to be adaptable, and really you have to be on your toes a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really why I've not really got a very serious collection of my own, because you just see something new and exciting every day, and you'll go, oh, I'm going to collect this, and then half an hour later you're like, oh no, I'm going to collect that. So it's it's like it's like being in a sweet shop, isn't it? Just surrounded by all the lovely things. But so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
So you guys are on the Strand. So do you work with any other, Gibbons or any other auction houses or anyone else?
We're in the same building as Stanley Gibbons, because obviously the Strand was where all the stamp shop used to be. So there's Gibbons are downstairs, we're upstairs, then directly across the road there's the stamp shop. I mean, I know the Gibbons, we all know each other very well, as you know, stamps. Everyone knows each other basically. Like I was out with the Gibbons people having a little beverage yesterday. I mean, but so we don't work together necessarily. I mean, if we have a question, one of us, you might ask someone down there or send them an email with a scan or something. But occasionally, when we're confused about something, we might ask them or another philatelist in the trade. But
the fact that the Strand has retained any sort of identity like that is wonderful, because I mean, obviously Nassau Street in New York has nothing left. Cherrystone just left Manhattan for New Jersey, so New York used to be the center of the American trade, and that's completely dried up. The fact that there's even 3 places left on the Strand.
I think the one across the road might have gone, but I'm not sure what's going on. So it was a little stamp shop, and I've heard rumours that it might have gone bust during the pandemic, but then someone might have bought it. So I'm really crossing my, because when I started, there were a couple more, because there was Vera Trinder, who was a specialist philatelic bookshop, but that's gone as well now. So I'm hoping that the stamp shop does, because it's nice to have other people around. It's just, I don't want to be the last lonely little stamp auction in London, as you say. It's not. Want some friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an aspect that people don't really consider that much, is that everybody, everybody knows each other, but people are still friendly with each other, whether they are competing auction houses or competing dealers. We know other dealers that we talk to about specific items. Charles and I send photos back and forth of different things. It's more me asking for him for assistance on things than the other way. But yeah, it's a friendly community. It's a friendly hobby. People work together to provide the best service to their customers, regardless of how it's done. So I think that's it's an interesting aspect.
Nice. That's the nice thing about stamps, is that most people are doing it because they just genuinely really love it. It's just a bunch of people getting paid to do their hobbies. So it's hard to get too cutthroat and evil when you're all just having fun looking at stamps. It's like,
yeah.
My question is, and this is something that Michael and I assume Michael gets it a lot. I get it a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. Is how to get young people involved in the hobby at all, let alone working in the hobby. You tell your story about, it seems very serendipitous. I studied geology, so I didn't. I
did geology. I did geology A level.
I bailed on that to go into stamps, and Bill Bergstrom, who I work with, he was a chemist. I feel like there's no, you talk about your story, which sounds a bit.
Scientists. There's a lot of scientists in stamps. I think it's a brain parallel. There's something in it.
Right, and it also proves that there's no one direct path. It's not all art or history majors who go in. There's really no direct path. So it frustrates me when I don't want to sound rude to anybody who's asked me this, but it frustrates me when people say, "How do we get young people involved?" As if there's some magic quick fix to save the hobby in the future. Because again, for me, I can't see myself doing anything else. It seems like it was predetermined in a way that I was going to go into this. So what do you say to people when, I'm not asking you what the way to get young people involved in the hobby is, sort of a twist on the question. What do you say to people? Because I'm sure that that's asked of you a lot. How do we get other people to follow in your footsteps?
It's a hard one, because when I talk to people about my job, they all think it's amazing. They're like, "Oh wow, that sounds so fascinating, that's so interesting and stuff." But it's not like young people don't like collecting stuff. It's not like, like things like, if you look at like Pokemon cards and all this malarkey, it's not that. I think it's just that connection has gone, that initial connection. You don't see stamps. Kids under 20, to them, what is a stamp? But in terms of people asking me, I don't know. It's a hard one, because you get them go quite negative about young people. You get a lot of people saying to you like, "Oh, why don't young people collect stamps?" Because they're always on their phones. They just sit on their phones all day. And you're like, that's not. To a degree, yes, that's because phones contain a vast wealth of information. It's like, so it's normally, I feel like that question comes with a lot of connotations that young people just want to look at their phones and take selfies. But it's quite how I think it's that you're not going to attract people with that kind of attitude towards young people, which I think it comes from a little bit, is not always from the nicest place thing. Some people genuinely do want to, but then some people, again, they sort of, as I said, they sort of answer their own question by going, "Oh, well, they just don't care. They want to look at pictures on the internet and blah, 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 blah." But I guess it depends on the tone, which is asked. But to be honest, I don't really know what I say, because I don't really know, and I really wish I knew, because it's a lot of fun. And
it seems like there's no one size fits all solution. You had your own journey. Michael had a more conventional journey with the family business, but I feel like we all need to get here in our own very different ways. But I think you're right that when that question is asked, and phones and video games, there's these certain scapegoats that are always blamed for the decline in stamp collecting. And you're right, if somebody goes into it with that mindset, that
I think it's also stamps it's not always, when I started in stamps, it's not necessarily the most welcoming environment for a young person to some degree. Being like when I was like 24, being a young woman when you go to the Royal for the first time, and like it's a very, I mean, I guess we're obviously, there's a few young people, but the majority of it's you go into a room full of generally quite introverted men, because it's not really a hobby. Mostly, it's a quite nerdy hobby to some degree. It's not really a hobby that chatty people tend to go for. So it's a little bit, I guess, perhaps intimidating in that regard, is that if you're, again, like you're 20, when I was a 24-year-old woman, like coming to these stamp shows and stuff at first, I mean, I'm confident as hell. And even I was a bit like, whoa, this is a very different dynamic. It's quite hard to sort of penetrate into a little bit. But so I guess that's probably part of an element as well, is it's not, again, there is some philatelists are great, and then again, some of it is a little bit snobby in places. So I guess that's another barrier. But
no, yeah, completely. There's definitely, I feel like we kind of, in the US, Charles and I got a leg up with joining the YPLF. Alex Simon kind of just that first stamp show I ever went to was wildly intimidating, but without someone there who was like, it's okay, these people want you here, that take your hand and kind of introduce you to the people that you need to know in the beginning, and then it gets easier over time. But there definitely is that barrier to entry of yourself, in whether it be self-doubt or just whether
it's not for me. It's just trying to get out of like the wife zone. Like for the first couple of years, I was married to whichever man, regardless of age, whether they were 15 or like 60, I was their wife. And they're the same people that ask these questions. They go, oh, why do young people come in? And then you're saying, but you think, well, for the first 2 years of me being in stamps, she thought I was married to this bloke, and I just kept turning up because I was lost. It's like there's something like 2 or 3 years before people actually realize I was there because I like these shows, because I like stamps, and again, not just because I just keep randomly walking into buildings for fun. It's like
yeah,
it does go both ways. Obviously, young people need to show the interest, and young people need to make that first move. But there does need to be a welcoming. There needs to be a career or a hobby or a product on the other side that is engaging and welcoming. It's very much a two-way street. You can't lament no young people collecting and then continue on with the mindsets that have prevailed for decades.
Yeah, it's a personality as well. You can't really force anyone into collecting. How do we bring people, how do we drag people in? No, it's just you expose them to it, and if they're interested, they'll come. And then when they come, you be welcoming. You show them that they can learn and that you're open to them learning, and don't beat them over the head when they get something wrong. It's a process on both sides. It's a little bit of a give and take, but it's definitely a personality. I don't think anyone's in the hobby who was forced to be in the hobby, to my knowledge.
Doesn't it sound a bit tempting to go around the street grabbing people with a net and bringing them into Stampex? They get the numbers up.
yeah, exactly. I don't think that's how we're getting people.
We talked a little bit in the introduction, I think, before we were recording, about how business has been generally good for the stamp trade over the last year and a half. How has it been for Grosvenor in particular to not have shows, to not have, to not be able to travel as much? What has it been like for you guys? How have you adapted? Are you looking forward to, someday soon with the big show coming up next year in London? What will it be like to, again, sort of transition from what we've all been doing the last year, 15 months back to the way things were?
Yeah, I mean, it's been particularly, I mean, I'm very sociable and very chatty, and I like people a lot. I mean, that's the thing I really love about my job is people. I mean, just getting to meet all the characters you get in stamps. So personally, I mean, my colleague Lynn doesn't like people. I don't think there's even noticed there's a pandemic on, whereas I'm the opposite. I miss it a lot. I mean, we've got a teeny bit of normality now. We had an auction last week, and we had a whopping 4 people in the room. Can you believe it? So that was nice to slowly have a little bit, because when you're auctioneering as well, auctioneering to an empty room is just the most depressing thing in the entire world. Because that's the main thing about Grosvenor is also in terms of like the London auction houses, we get by far the most actual people coming to the auction. We had to have a nice experience for auction day. That's I think one of our biggest sells, that you can come to Grosvenor, have a nice day, see loads of people, because we used to have only 30 people in the auction room. So for us as a company, that's been the particular thing that's really, not been very nice for us, is to miss or seeing all the faces in the auction room. So I mean, it's been strange as well, because obviously it's pushed a lot of our clients online and stuff. So people that would never in a million years have bid online, for example, the amount of internet bidding and stuff we get now makes everything a lot slower. So yeah, it's just I think it's just been, yeah, we just you have to go on with it. I mean, it's been difficult, I guess, because it's always harder to get the material in. That's always the harder side of the business, is finding the material to sell. But then when you also can't go to people's houses and stuff, and I think a lot of people with collections, they want to meet you to get that. They don't want to just post, and they want to meet you and check you out and make sure they get the vibe from you that you're honest and legit and things like that. So yeah, just been plodding on, and as I said, now there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel where I was hoping to come across to America for the the big show in August, but that's looking, I think, less and less likely by the day. They thought that the USA might be on our have a green, amber, whatever system, but unfortunately America wasn't added to it, so that beacon of hope has just gone down slightly. But I think it's slowly starting to, because we've obviously got very high vaccination rates, etc. I think there's hope for a couple of stamp shows in the summer moving.
So I later want to go back to the point of people in the auction bidding on lots and everything, because I love that, and I feel like we're slowly getting away from that, and I love that you guys still have that. But I want to focus on something that you just mentioned that I don't think we've really talked about that much before, which is visiting people to pick up their collections and speaking to people about their collections, making them feel comfortable about their about the lots they're consigning. So before the pandemic, I assume this happened quite regularly with you and Glenn in being the two kind of chief describers. Would you what was the process for going to view people's collections? I assume give them a rough estimate and bring them back.
Yeah, it depends it varies greatly on who they are, what they've got. I mean, some people, if it's like an estate, they just generally want it out of the house. They're like, someone, partner's died, dad's died, whatever, they just want it out. They don't care, just get me the most money for my stamps. Whereas it's generally people who are collectors that want you to go and have a look and have a chat. And a lot of people have an idea in their head about how they like it lotted. Some people, they're breaking down loads. Some people want it as bigger collections, blah blah blah. So some people, want a single cut, a lot as a cover as a single lot, so their mate can buy it because their mate's been eyeing it up for years. So yeah, generally, I mean, Glyn doesn't do a lot of visits. So generally, my colleague, either Stuart Billington or I, would go to things. I've just got a car actually, so I can do a lot more visits. But generally, if it sounds exciting, this is the other thing. I guess you all have the same issue where it can be hard sometimes to try and gauge if it's worth going to something. It's when you get like a few pictures and you're like, oh well, that could be, maybe not. So yeah, just trying to work out whether to a degree whether it's worth actually going to financially, because while I do love stamps and people, you also have to remember that it is a business, and if you go to every single call you get, then you're gonna stop making money pretty quickly. But yeah, so generally it would be one of us would go and have a look and sort of see if it's for us, see if they want to sell, see what they're wanting, etc., to make sure it's actually going to be, because some people again will have very high expectations. You'll go and they'll think it's worth 100,000, you can immediately see it's worth like 20, and then to try and, because that's obviously try and iron out things like that beforehand. So again, then we'd generally bring it back to their offices and describe it there, and yeah, goes to auction. Cross our fingers.
Yeah, I feel like things have changed a lot from when I kind of started to get into the hobby in that regard to where they are now. With what you mentioned, with if you go to every single deal, you're going to lose money. What my father and I used to do was put together 20 deals at once and go drive down to Florida, see 20 people at once and drive back. But it would take us about a month or 2 months to put all that together. But now, that was back when I was 15, I'll say 16 years old, so I could help drive the car. But now it's a lot, I don't want to say maybe more competitive is the correct term, where we can't wait that long anymore for deals to accumulate over months. Or if you call someone, they're in Florida, their collection is right on the fence of whether or not you should go by itself, so you try to put something else together to go see it. And by the time you call them back to say, okay, I've put a trip together to come see you, Florida, 1,500 miles away from where we are, it's a 2-day drive. they've already given it to another auction house or they've sold it to another dealer, and that's a lot more common now than it used to be. Do you find the same?
Yeah, I mean, I find the main thing for me is to make sure that people, even if they don't sell through Grosvenor, they do make the right choice about what they're doing. Because it's very, I guess you're the same thing. It's very difficult when someone might mention on the phone the names that you know is someone dodgy. Obviously, there's not many people in stamps that are genuinely, iffy. But every now and then you do get those awkward calls where they're like, "Oh, well, I'm thinking of you," or insert name here, and you're like, "Oh, no," because you can't really say anything, but you also don't want people to get, in trouble in that regard. But it is, I mean, there is a lot of, particularly for like when some well-known people die and things like that, and it comes to market, etc. There's definitely competition, but I think that's why I do well. I mean, I do well because people, I think, once they start speaking to me, they can sense that I'm just genuinely very excited about stamps. I mean, some of the people in the industry, they're more like business people who know a little bit about stamps, whereas I'm predominantly a philatelist who knows a bit about business. So when it comes to those situations, I think once people start talking, they do realize that I just genuinely love stamps. So that's, but it is definitely, there's definitely quite a bit of shopping around for some people. And you sometimes wish they would be a little bit more open with you when they're shopping around, because that's, that would be the dream, but obviously that's not how the world works.
Yeah, exactly. So if I may touch back upon the auction house part, where people coming in, how has that been lately? Because in the States, I feel like once some places went online, the numbers dipped dramatically for attendance. Or I know specific auctions that I used to go to where they weren't online when I started going there, and there were 50 people in the room sometimes. And then as soon as they went online, I was one of 10 people in the room. And the prices doubled for all the auction lots, which is fantastic. But the number of people attending the auctions dropped.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what our auctions are like when people can come to so I can come to things freely. I'm very interested to see what it will be like. I mean, as I said, I really hope we do manage to keep our room attendance as it was before. Because I feel like, I don't know which way, because some people seem to be going with the pandemic. Some people are just very nervous about re-entering normal life, and some people seem very desperate to get out of the house. And I've got people that want to just pop in from like Norfolk and stuff and up north just because they don't even want to buy anything. They just want to get out of the house and just come and sit in the auction room. So again, I really hope that it doesn't all go online, but I get a feeling that it probably will. I mean, again, some of the clients that we've had that can before the pandemic could barely use a computer, and now they're online bidding. It's it's good in a way, because the internet and it's good to have people who can actually use computers, and that they've been forced to. That's been a good side effect, I think, of it. But I just want real stamp shows, and I want real people in real auction rooms.
When you talk about calling a sale to an empty room, that's it for me at least throws off my you sort of go into get into a zone, and you get into a pattern of and when you're basically just staring at a computer screen waiting for the next bid to come in, it really I think takes away a lot of the again, just there's a repetition and a rhythm to it that is really easy to fall into when you've got people on the phones and the floor and everything. And again, when it just comes down to looking at a computer screen, even though the bids are great, from a purely financial standpoint, I'm not going to complain if two people are going at it online. But just in a
it almost negates the need for an auctioneer when you've just got internet bidding in a book. I mean, it's almost like, why am I even here? Just going to have a cup of tea. I mean,
yeah, sometimes I just sit there and wait for it to, again, you can see even when the person passes on a lot. So you just sit there and wait and then call out whatever the high bid is. I agree that it certainly makes us more disposable in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I just want proper auctions back, please. Again, it was just having 4 people was the biggest luxury of my life. I'm like, 4 real humans in a room. It's great.
So I guess this would be a question for the both of you is how do you, you described how you feel when you're calling an auction to an empty room, but how do you feel the auction progresses? I know, as you said, it's slower, but do you feel like the overall, I mean, I guess it's tough to gauge the anxiety or adrenaline of the bidders when you can't actually see them, but do you feel like it's more lively when there are people in the room, or do you feel like the people bid more aggressively when they're online?
Well, no, I mean, definitely in the room you can see them glaring at each other, when they're bidding against each other. You can see the glares and and I get that. And I guess when you can see a person physically, you can see them there, and then how dare they outbid you, and then you have to go. So I think having people in the room is beneficial in that regard, is that people will just egg each other on, and there's the little rivalries between collectors and between dealers and stuff, and they want to win the lots and show that they've got the most money and all this. And I guess you can't really have that atmosphere when you're bidding online. So I think definitely, I think I'd rather have room bidders in terms of getting the best results. But I mean, again, it's been price wise. I mean, our auctions, it's been ridiculous. Some of the prices stuff have been going for. So as you said, I've got no complaints with the prices during the pandemic.
Charles, do you feel that?
I would echo that. There's a lot of fun interplay when you've got a room full of people, and you watch the little relationships and rivalries play out, and even when the auctioneer locks eyes with someone, trying to see whether trying to predict whether they're going to go one more step or not. Those are all fun little things, especially for someone. I love reading body language and stuff, and when you maybe people on the other hand, there's probably people who feel more comfortable bidding strongly in anonymity on the internet. They can sit back on their couch with a snack or a beer or something, and maybe they feel a bit safer being out of the public's view. But you can't really replace that. The tension is very palpable when you're in a room with people, and I like that.
Actually, it can be quite a fun dynamic between the room and the internet, because you can see the room getting more and more frustrated that this anonymous person, as you say, that's hiding behind the internet outbidding them.
Yeah, but when it's just two internet bidders, it's we have to come to the realization that'll become more and more common. But there's a certain element that's lost, and I think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah. I feel like I know the answer to this question before I even ask it, but would either of you ever consider kind of one specific auction, just no online bidders, just everybody has to show up? I know the answer to the question before I even ask it, but the idea is kind of how it used to be. Phone bidders, sure, but kind of, if you want the auction lots, come to the auction.
That in my dream world, in my dream world, Grosvenor would have been London, it had been Stockport, and people would be forced to come to the auctions and talk to each other and have a nice time. But unfortunately, not everyone's as chatty and northern as me, so unfortunately, that's not how the world works.
I always thought it would be a fun idea to try that one. Obviously, you'd have to get permission from the consignor that this was going to be a huge risk. But I thought for an anniversary of Harmer's or something, that would be fun to try. A throwback auction with. I would always love to have an actual book in front of me as well, where I actually enter the bids by hand and don't have to rely on what the computer screen tells me to open the bidding at.
We have that. We still have a physical auction book. It's a bit confusing now because we now have our physical auction book with all the bids on that have been posted in and emailed in. But then we also have an internet book as well now. So people bid online, but they can also leave bids on that auction book. So now you're having to look at the two books and work out a starting price from two books. My brain hurts quite a lot after the auction. Should do when on the first auction, when they do the candles that burn down, we should go really old fashioned.
I think that would be even if a lot of the auction houses came together and did this more as a novelty, as a tribute to the history of the hobby than anything else. It might be fun for everyone to kick in a couple of lots and hold a turn of the 19th century auction.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific idea. It might be easier to do when you're at a stamp show, so more people are there and in general, but yeah, I think that's something that the whole hobby is almost based on this feeling of nostalgia. You look at stamps, and this is what history used to be.
Not too far back, because it wasn't one of the first auctions of women. I think they did like the quite nice women first, and then the other way around. I think a little bit of nostalgia, but not. I don't want to get souls, just as a thing.
We won't go back that far.
Yeah, not that far.
So my last question is, you've been in this hobby almost a decade now. Where do you see yourself going from here? What are your aspirations? What are your goals? Where would you like to? It sounds like Things are going great at Grosvenor, but if you had to look, 5-10 years down the line, what are your hopes for your own personal development within the hobby?
I think it's just to learn more stuff. I know that's quite obvious, but just to keep learning and keep, particularly as I said, I'm not so strong on postal history, so I think got to try and collar Glyn more and get Glyn to share more of his postal history secrets. I think I just want to keep Grosvenor on the path it's on, where we've built, we have a company that's just a very nice place to work, and I want to keep that very nice environment that we have. And I think we have a good reputation for being enthusiastic and all that kind of stuff. So I think I just continue with more of the same, of just learning about stamps, meeting lots of people with stamps, and just having a nice time. Is that a good aspiration? Just have a nice time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But when your work feels like a hobby, I think that's a very realistic goal to have. I still don't feel like I go to work. I don't think Michael does. You certainly don't sound like you feel like you have to go to work every day. It's a privilege to get to play around in this hobby every day. So I think that's as good an aspiration as any in philately.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you so much for coming to talk to us, for taking the time out and chatting with us today.
And I don't know how August is going to look with the APS show, because my girlfriend lives in Northern Ireland, so I've been watching the red and green and amber lists closely just to try and get her over here. August isn't looking as good as it could have. But certainly whenever you get over to the States for a show again, we'd love to, again, maybe the three of us can gather around and continue our conversation in person and,
we
touch
have to
base
look
on
at
it.
our phones. We have to just go on our phones, remember? Being millennials. Don't talk to each other.
No, we can text each other at the show, and that can be a whole episode. That way we can fulfill everyone's stereotypes of us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And I wish you the best of luck with your future auctions. I know you've been you just completed an auction, right?
Yeah, the GB sale was last week.
Yeah, congratulations on I saw briefly online that the Prices Realized just knocked it out of the park, right? Yeah.
No, it was some really nice material actually. A lot of it was from one big estate, and he just had some really cool, really way out stuff. He had a collection of horse duty revenues, and I've seen maybe one in 7 or 8 years in stamps, and he had 30 of these. And then there were those things that work because they're so rare, but then you have all of a sudden you have 31. It makes them look not rare, even though they are incredibly rare. So just the lovely collection of railways and then he had a lot of Oxford and Cambridge material, which is quite interesting as well. So just lots of really quirky stuff in the auction. It was a very nice auction.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the success of that, and good luck on all your future auctions.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Mike, I really enjoyed that conversation. I thought that was fantastic. The more we talk to people, the more I realize that there's no one way to get young people involved, because how would you anticipate that a physics student at Oxford would end up working for Grosvenor?
By picking up a set of stamps at a flea market,
like a charity shop. How do you get from point A to point B? And maybe there is something, we talk about the sciencey thing, geology, chemistry, physics. Maybe there is something in the way our brains are wired, but again, you have a 15-year-old girl, I think, who picked up stamps cheaply because there was a tea set on them. Yeah. And all of a sudden she's working full time at Grosvenor. I think this is what people miss when they say, how do we get young people to work in the hobby? Mm-hmm. I don't think any of us could have predicted our own paths, and hearing her story and how serendipitous it all seems was really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's all about exposure. I really think it is. It's all about exposing, putting stamps in weird places, just exposing people to.
You don't know where those seeds are going to germinate down the line. If somebody sees a stamp as a young kid or as a 15-year-old or whatever, you're right. You cannot become a philatelist if you don't know what a postage stamp is.
Yes.
That doesn't mean if you know what a postage stamp is, you will become a philatelist, but there's no chance even.
Yeah.
Unless you do have that early exposure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's one of those things where, you take Spanish in high school because you have to. And then once you leave high school, you want to know Spanish. You say, that's, if it's forced upon you, it's just not, it's not going to stick.
Right. There's a lot of books in like high school English class where I didn't want to read it at the time because my teacher was making me write an essay on a book report. But then I go revisit that book now and I'm like, I wish I'd paid attention to this in high school. I think stamps are the same. You can lead a horse to water.
Yep.
But you can't make him drink.
Too true. I really like that conversation, not only because we talked about young philatelists, but because we got to talk a little bit about auction houses, and we got to talk a little bit about the behind the scenes stuff. Yeah.
I feel like I'm so inside sometimes, doing this day in and day out. It's nice to talk to somebody else who does it on a different continent and hear what's the same and what's different. And it's great to be able to talk about these things.
Speaking of behind the scenes stuff, we've got a super interesting episode coming up in a couple weeks. I don't know when exactly it'll air, but we're recording it in a while. You're actually, do you want to talk a bit about this, or should I? You're actually coming up here to work on a collection.
I'm coming up to New Hampshire. We've got this collection, 50 85 cartons. Something, a lot of cartons, many, many cartons. And Michael and I are going to, wade through this stuff and try and figure out what's what and what's going to be sold by Noble Spirit and what's going to be sold by Harmers and what are things worth. And I think it'll be fun to give people a look at what goes into breaking down a collection this voluminous. A lot of people are used to having their album or two. Here's, again, dozens of banker's boxes that we're going to have to make heads and tails of. And the fact that Claire will be recording that whole process, I think, is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the long story short, a dealer contacted Charles and said, hey, I've got this collection that's got some great stuff for H.R. Harmer, but then some bulk material as well that
might be better somewhere else. And I was like, hey, I know a guy.
Yeah, so I'm excited because this is the first thing that we're going to be working on together. So
I agree. This will be a lot of fun. We talk so much, we bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah. Now we get to go into business together, so to speak. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and we're excited to have everyone along for the ride.
But I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm excited to hit the road and come up and see you. I think that'll be a lot of fun. But until then, people can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify podcasts, YouTube, philatelypodcast.com, philatelypodcast@gmail.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it, we're there.
Yep, too true. Michael,
I'll talk to you real soon. Looking forward to the next episode.
All right, see you then. Bye.
See you.